Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the roll pan. Basically picking up where I left off in the last video. Got it out here on the work stand on top of the tailgate. This is the issue that is in most concern here, is where that 3/16 of an inch was taken out. Probably do a little more grind on here. The other side's not too bad, but that's the biggest issue, other than where I had to do the bend work with the clamp and these 2x4. So these got to get knocked down, fixed up. This has to be addressed, but I'm going to block the whole piece because there might be a small manufacturer's imperfection somewhere, and we don't want that to show up in our paint. But speaking of paint, yeah, the bed side on the driver's side is finished. So let's take a quick little peek at that before we carry on with this. Now, at the time of the recording here, this has probably been sitting for about 2 weeks now. This side came out actually pretty good. And like I said in a previous video, if I'd have put the time into finishing the body work here, probably wouldn't have need the flares, but I want the flares, so that's kind of the way it goes. I almost forgot to paint the gas door when I was doing it, but overall, yeah, this turned out really nice. But yeah, let's get back to that roll pan. Now I wiped this down with some wax and grease remover in a squirt bottle. I got some 320. It's a Velcro disc. I don't have any sticky paper in 320, but put it on a block. I'm just going to block down basically from here up to here. Okay, this area from down here isn't really seen, and if you can, I don't know if you can see in the shot or not, but there's a stamping line right here, an indent. If you want to get rid of that, that's great. That's up to you. To me, it doesn't really matter. It's down underneath. It's not a high vis area, so I'm not going to worry about it. But here, you know, I've scuffed all this up while I was working on it. I may have put a small ding in it. I don't know, but I'm going to block it down with 320 just to be sure. Yeah, just finishing blocking down the E-coat where it needs it. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's any imperfections in the stamp piece. If there was, you would, you know, definitely see some differences. Okay, like real shiny spot where there was a dent, or an unsanded spot where there, oh sorry, I got that kind of backwards, a shiny spot from steel if there was an outward dent, or an unsanded area if there was an inward dent. But overall, okay, I scuffed this down with the 320, and I don't see any issues. Now around here, of course, we'll just Scotch-Brite this because there's too many curves, and it's a license plate tag area. It's not a big deal. So now we can move on, fix up the dents, and put some Bondo on these areas. Okay, so knock these down hammer and dolly, as you can see by the little dingy marks. Went over that with some 80 grit, flattened it back down, went over this with some 80 grit, wiped it down. It's ready for some filler. Fine filler is applied. I didn't use regular like Bondo, like body filler type filler, the thicker, heavier filler. Fine finishing filler on here, 2-component. I'll hit this with some 80 on a DA, and then I'll hand block it. There's not a whole lot I don't think that needs to be done here. Might have to give it another little skim, I don't know, but it's the process. It's all about process, and there's no point in you know, showing you over and over the same thing, and the same thing that people do in their videos over and over. Fill it, block it out, fill it as many times, and block it out as many times as you need to until you feel you have it good. Spray some primer on it, put a guide coat on, block that out, prime it again, block it again, get it ready for paint. That's pretty much just the process, guys. It's a process. Whether it's a little tiny job like this or a whole vehicle, it's the same thing. So like I said, I'm going to grab the DA, knock this down. I'll hit it with some 80 and some primer on it. So I'll show you some little clips along the way. So knock this all down with the DA. Now I got 80 grit on a hard rubber block. And I'm just going to block this all out. Now you might wonder, well, I've never seen a block like that. It's because it's homemade. It used to be one of those big, hard, big rubber blocks, like this big, has the nails in it for clipping your sandpaper. Yeah, I ran it through the bandsaw, made it into a more manageable block. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll bring you back. All blocked down with the 80 grit. I took a little piece, folded it in half, sticky side to sticky side, held it between my fingers, and did the radius here. Yeah, it's not too bad. Feels pretty good, actually. Wiped it down with some wax and grease remover. Gonna hit it with some Transtar 2-in-1. Try to fill in a little bit of these 80 scratches. This isn't really a filler primer, but you get enough coats on, anything fills in. It's such a small area, it's not a big deal. And if you recall, I did all this in 320. So we're basically just trying to catch this more or less up to a 220 scratch, per se, and then prime the whole thing with proper 2K primer. So, like I said, these areas sprayed with the aerosol Transtar 2-in-1, got a guide coat on it. In here, all scuffed with Scotch-Brite, and anywhere else that was shiny. 220 on a small block. Just gonna block out the guide coat. Hopefully it's good, and shoot some DTM on the piece. So the ends here look like they've blocked out pretty good. I still have some, you can see them little spits from the aerosol primer to deal with. But on the back here, I scuffed this all down with a red Scotch-Brite. And then you can see where the weld seam is there. Same on the other end. A couple of good coats of just lacquer paint, aerosol paint from the hardware. A couple good generous coats over the welded areas, and then a coat over everything else on the back here. It's a little sticky still. I'll let it dry up, but I think we're going to get a thunderstorm, so I'm going to have to stop for a little bit. But yeah, now once this gets a little drier, and maybe if it doesn't rain, I get back to putting the DTM on the front side here, okay? Now, then something to remember with a lot of DTM like primers, they don't have any corrosion resistance in them. So if I was to prime this and you see any of these bare metal areas, I left this outside for a considerable amount of time and then went to sand it, there'd be rust on that metal because the moisture will still go through that primer. If yeah, a little thunder. If it's left outside. So storing the part in the garage, there's no issue. It was like a week since the other clip there. And yeah, there was no rust on the part. It was just sitting in the garage waiting for me to come back to it. So keep that in mind when you're working on your pieces. They're going to be outside. They need to be in epoxy to be sealed up. But if you're working indoors, you can get away to some extent with just regular primers. Okay. Well, would you look at that? The piece, the roll pan, is in primer coat. 3 coats in this area on each end where I did repair work, 2 coats on everything else, even up underneath along this edge. It doesn't matter that primer gets to the inside side on that lacquer. It's not going to bother anything. Now, this only takes 3 hours to cure because it is a 2K product, okay? So at that point, well, actually anytime now, I can put the guide coat on and then wet block it after about 3 hours with 600 grit and put it straight into paint, because this is the only areas, these areas were the only areas right here on the ends that were of an issue. Really, a little bit you're not going to see up here because of the tailgate, and the rest of the panel was already flat from manufacturing. So really, I don't see any need other than block it out with 600. As long as I don't cut through a whole bunch of spots and have to do some touch-ups, boom, put her straight into paint. Been way more than 3 hours since I applied that primer. It's been like a whole week, and getting back to it. So where I left off was primer was applied. I put a guide coat on it before I put it away. Like I said, it's a week later now. I got some warm water in the pail, 600 grit in there. I got round block for, round areas like this. Harder. These are just Duras. They're not really hard. They're a foam rubber, but hard enough for all these flat areas. And then a more softer, pliable block for some of these other areas like here. Okay, very simple, straightforward. 600 grit. Wet it all out in an X pattern. It's all nice and flat. Paint it. Everything's all wet sanded, nice and smooth. Gonna share something though. This was all sanded, left in paste, and it was time to take the dogs for a walk. We were gone for, I don't know, 3/4 of an hour, and they come back, did some little touch-ups of whatnot, and this formed. So I hope you guys can see this shot. That is rust on the bare steel, and there's a few other spots here as well. This just formed within a couple of hours, and yeah, so I'm going to hit these areas with some red Scotch-Brite and then some Transtar 2-in-1 aerosol, and then get some paint on it. Now it looks like ready for some base and clear. Like I said in the last little clip there, I hit the rusted bare metal spots with the Scotch-Brite, wiped it all down with wax and grease remover, and you can see I've got some aerosol on here. I just put that on, went and mixed up the paint. So we're ready to go. And sorry guys, I really suck at holding the camera and painting, concentrating on painting at the same time. So you're gonna get this done, and then we'll come back. First coat of base applied, laid down pretty good. Have to apply 2 more coats. So here's a little tip for all the garage painter guys. If you put 2 coats of base on something and it's covered and you're happy, you need to do that with all your pieces. I started out with 3 coats of base on my project, so every part gets 3 coats of base. That way you've got better guarantee of your colors are going to match, painting piece by piece. Okay, let's carry on. Now relocated a little bit so I could have some more shade. 3 coats of base applied, gun cleaned, ready to apply some clear coat once this cures for a few more minutes. Okay, manufacturer says, you know, we only got to wait 10 minutes. I'd say you should wait a little longer than that. Give it a half hour even. Okay, so this is basically 2.5 wet coats of clear. And I say 2.5 because I was going to smash on that last wet coat, but when I was waiting, this, whatever it is right there, a bug or something out of the trees, I fell in the second wet coat, so that kind of killed the paint job. There's no point in clear coating over something like that, okay? And there's no way of getting that out of there without making a mess. And then the next thing was, you know, I started out over here and I ended up over here because I was chasing the shade across the driveway, doing the best I could. It turned out really decent though. It's a nice looking piece. Unfortunately, it's cooking in the sun here. Hopefully that doesn't have an adverse effect on, you know, it healing up too fast and the thinner's not getting out, because then I'll end up with a bunch of solvent boil, and I don't want that. But there's not much I can do. I can't move it. I'm scared to move it until it cures up. So basically that's it, guys. The roll pan is painted, ready to put on. Thanks for watching. Until the next one. Peace, guys.